and then right before I close it, I'm going to stuff it the rest of the way. But for now, I'm going to continue decreasing. First, I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and for this next row, I'm going to decrease every second stitch. So first stitch is non-decreased, and I've got to be careful now that it's partially stuffed to not pull up any fiber fill when I pull up loops. But now I'm going to decrease on the second stitch, so I'm going to pull up a loop in both, just like I did in the last row, and crochet together. And I'm going to do that every second stitch this time. So there's the first one, and now the second. Okay. I'm going to continue this all the way around. Oh, and I actually forgot to mark my stitches. But I can see that this is where. Don't forget to mark your stitches. But I'm going to replace my stitch marker before I get any farther and make it harder to tell where my stitch marker goes. And now I'm just going to continue until I get back to that stitch marker. So I've gotten to the last decrease of this row, and now I'm going to remove my stitch marker. And now I'm just going to keep my stitch marker off, because the next row I'm just going to decrease every single stitch. So into that first stitch, I'm going to pull up a loop, and into the next one, pull up another, and then crochet together. And I'm going to do that in every single stitch all the way around. This part gets a little bit harder to not pick up fiber fill with the hooks, so just be a little bit careful of that. Just going to push the fiber fill down a little bit. Okay. It looks like I've gotten all the way around now, so I'm just going to slip stitch to finish. And then I'm going to cut off my yarn and leave a little bit of a tail. Okay, now I've got that tiny little hole left, so I can use that to stuff the rest of my piece. If this is a little too tight, you can use the end of your hook to get it in there. Or you could just stuff the rest of it before you do that last row, but I find it really, really hard to not pick up the fiber fill if you completely stuff it before doing the last row. So I'm just going to stuff it in with the end of my hook before sewing it closed. And when your piece is stuffed enough, just reshape it a little bit so that it is more egg-shaped. So now I have this nice oval shape, and now I just have to sew the bottom closed and sew the spots to the shell. So as you can see, I have finished all of my spots and my egg, so now I just have to sew the spots to the egg and then sew all the ends in. So I have 6 spots, and the way that I like to do it is to put 3 spots on one side and then 3 on the other. And I'm going to put 1 on the top, 1 in the middle, and then 1 each on the top and the bottom to one side. So I've got my tails threaded already, And now I'm just going to sew the spot to the egg. Oops. Okay. Just going to go into each stitch and sew around it. And I'm going to make sure to keep it in a circular shape. Okay. So as you can see, I've sewn all the way around and I've gotten back to the bottom. So now I'm just going to sew my end in, and I'm just going to do it very, very simply by just sticking my needle right through to the bottom of the work, because I still haven't sewn closed the very bottom. So I'm just going to pull that tail right through, and I am going to push the tail back into the bottom of the egg. You could also cut off the tail, but I'm just going to push it through. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other tail. Just going to go back inside through the bottom of the egg, the bottom of the spot, I mean, and then come back out through the bottom of the egg. Okay, and now I'm just going to push that other tail in. Okay, so now I have one spot sewn onto my egg, and I'm going to add the rest of them. First I'm going to add one down below the first spot that I added. Then I'm going to add one just above. So I'm going to take one of my bigger sized spots and line it up with where I want it to be. And then I'm just going to do exactly the same thing that I did with the other spot, and sew it straight on to the shell. And then I'm going to just go straight in through those loops and continue to sew around. As you can see, I've finished sewing on all of the spots, and now I just have to sew closed that bottom hole. Another thing that you could do if you don't want to sew close this hole is you could use your last spot to cover it up and sew it on that way instead, and then just sew in the ends after. So to sew this closed, I'm going to go into every stitch this way, and then after I've finished going through every stitch, I'm just going to pull the tail closed, and it should seal itself. So I've gotten completely around, and now I'm just going to pull the tail until it seals itself, just like that. So now I'm just going to sew the end in. And to do that, I'm just going to go in a few times and come back out again. And after I've gone around a few times, I'm just going to cut away the excess. And I'm going to roll my egg around so that it has a better shape. And now the egg is finished. So I hope you all liked this tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, you can get in touch with me on Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr or down in the comments section below. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, then please hit the like button and subscribe, or follow me on Facebook, Tumblr, or Twitter. Once again, the links are in the description. So I'll see you all next time. Bye!